If you haven't been living under a rock and this is your first time back in society since 2023, you probably have heard about and used AI chatbots. And while ChatGPT, Gemini and Claude 3 are great tools and fun to play around with, there's also a dark side when it comes to AI development. And I'm sure you can spot the issue easily. Do you, for example, remember the diverse picture creation from Google Gemini? Let me refresh your memory. We had Native American founding fathers, a black Asian Viking, and a black female pope, and of course many more. Obviously, the issue here is not any skin tone or gender, at least not if you're not a but the absolutely ridiculous historical inaccuracy and that Google manually fixed something so that these pictures get created. There was a huge outcry by many people, and the issue has since been addressed by Google, and probably even was an honest mistake, but it illustrates the dangers and issues here perfectly. No one wanted this, but because a few people in a company decided, hey, this is the way the world has to be, they program it into the AI, and then you cannot generate any other output but this. And it's not just about picture creation, it's about anything. It gets much worse than just that. And if you think right now, whatever, it's not that big of a deal, let's consider Sally. Sally is growing up in a world where AI chatbots are basically the source of knowledge. She doesn't use books and only rarely Googles something. Instead, when she wants to know something, she asks an AI chatbot. And of course, there are a gazillion controversial topics in our society, and they are getting more with every day. So let's say, as an example, to understand renewable energy sources better, Sally asks an AI chatbot, hey, what are the advantages and disadvantages of renewable energy sources? And the AI answers a huge list of advantages and merely a few disadvantages. Sally has heard something about inefficiency, high land use or other issues before, but asking the chatbot about it, it just brings up renewable energy sources have very little disadvantages compared to the huge advantages they bring, and they are necessary to combat climate change, without giving any further details or even allowing for a reflected discussion around it. Well, okay then, the internet said it and the AI as well, so it has to be right. We all know that feeling. And even if you personally don't buy into everything, sometimes you still buy into things, especially when they confirm your narrative and bias, without looking further into it. And the majority of people probably won't ever question this much further. New upcoming generations will probably naturally use AI chatbots as a source of knowledge and truth, just as back in the day we used books and then later we used Google. And if the output is controlled by a few corporate people who decide what the right beliefs are to have from the top down, AI has the potential to turn into the biggest propaganda machine in human history. Charles Hoskinson, the founder of Cardano, also mentioned his concerns in a recent interview.
So a government can coordinate with a small group of actors. They basically can train the AI, and the AI becomes the sole source of truth, and it deplatforms or delegitimizes anything else. And it's not the place of the AI tool to have a political agenda or opinion. The point of this is to help us answer questions or help us think and reason about things. And of course, it can be there to help correct cognitive biases and other things and point those out, but it doesn't get to decide what's right and what's wrong. We as humans should be in that driver's seat. The minute it crosses that threshold, it's no longer a tool, it's a political instrument, no better than what the KGB was and the truth ministries were, or these people. It's just of a different nature. So that does deeply concern me, and it's very clear to me if you look at what Microsoft is doing, what Google is doing, and OpenAI is doing, they are moving in a direction where there's a very particular political agenda in the alignment training, and they're hiding it under the auspices of AI safety. And you look no further than some of these AI safety sets. If you ask about a border wall between the United States and Mexico, they actually label that as a racist question. And people have identified the piece of code in the training for these things and the weight of that. So I guess even just a discussion of walls is now apparently off limits because of particular political agenda that we have. What if it's an area with an enormous amount of gang violence and we just want to create a physical barrier and we're curious about the cost of doing that? Well, I guess that's racist according to this thing, because some small group of people, probably living in Washington or Oregon or Northern California in a beautiful area, not even close to the border, arbitrarily decided that. Now, that is the source of truth upon which the next generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, are going to be trained on, and they're going to view that like the Wikipedia, and that's the source of truth, and it becomes propaganda, basically, to indoctrinate a generation.
And not just big tech companies, but also governments could control the output of AI systems more and more, basically programming their own political biases into it and subtly vilifying the opposition more and more, and everybody who doesn't share their political viewpoints. Now don't worry, there is a solution to all of this, and we'll get to it in just a moment. But I hope you see the issue with a small group of people controlling such a system and deciding what is right or wrong, and what is okay to talk about and what we cannot talk about. You might dismiss this as a conspiracy, but think about this. Right now, the government maybe consists of people that you like and that you've voted for and that you trust, although I don't know why anybody should ever fully trust a government. But anyway, political climates change. Would you also trust if the opposition would be in the government right now? And even if you would do that, can you also trust the government 10, 20 or 50 years from now? No, and this is why we need to build these systems very robust. There's always a potential for abuse. If it's not right now or in the next few years, it may be 30 or 50 years in the future. Point is, we need to make sure that abuse in the first place cannot even happen. And we are already seeing the start of trying to centralize the AI space more and preventing smaller companies and startups from participating with the Californian anti-AI bill. This bill would destroy open source AI development and effectively centralize it to a small group of companies who are controlled by the government. All in the name of AI safety, of course. And we need to be aware of one thing here. Fear is a great way to instrumentalize people and push them in the direction that you want them to go. And here we are seeing a huge instrumentalization of the fear that a rogue AI all of a sudden gets loose and destroys humanity. Which, to be honest, is a little bit ridiculous at this point. We have a lot of other things to worry about before this issue comes on the list. Namely, other humans using AI systems for their own narrow goals. Now let's come to what we, as people who love and want to keep our freedom, can do. And yes, this solution would even be our best bet to keep a potential rogue AI in check. Instead of centralized AI development, we want to push decentralized AI development. And the beautiful thing is that you, me, you, and even you and we all can get involved. But let's have a look what decentralized AI development means. So we basically would have computing nodes across the entire planet. So these are computing nodes. Some of them are in America, some of them are in Europe, some of them are in Asia, some of them in Australia, or wherever. They are all across the world. And they power AI systems. So you can see the compute being distributed across the entire planet makes it basically impossible to control or shut down for any one government. Also, this will be controlled by everyone who wants to get involved simultaneously. So decentralization basically leads to democratization, which is also something Edward Snowden already mentioned.
Decentralization is what we want to aim for. Because that replicates democracy.
So these nodes may form clusters, and these clusters all work on their own single AI tools. The great thing is that we now have different AI tools that can communicate with one another and learn from each other, which is one of our best bets to keep a potential rogue AI in check. If you have this AI, for example, going rogue, it communicates still with these other AI tools who basically can oversee it and make sure that nothing bad happens here. Also, these AI tools are fed by a diversity of opinions across the entire globe, basically making sure that not one single opinion dominates everything else and everybody else gets excluded. It's a diverse viewpoint from all perspectives that gets fed into the AI tools. Obviously, this was just a very brief and quick rundown, but can you see how much potential and how much advantages decentralized AI development has over centralized AI development? And yes, there are decentralized AI projects that are being worked on right now. For example, the ASI Alliance and also BitTensor. These systems would really put the power back in the hands of the people, in the hands of all of us, which is how it should be in a truly democratic system. No one entity or government can control these tools or shut them down if they don't propagate what the government wants them to propagate. And again, if you don't think this is an issue right now, more power to you, but what about in 30 years or 50 years? We don't know what is going to happen then, and this is exactly why democratic systems need to be built as robust as possible. If you want to find more about the decentralized development of AI tools, check out this video over here where I talk about BitTensor, and I go way more in depth into how this distribution looks like.